Why are we in this room? Every year, millions are allocated for HIV, TB, and STIs in Mpumalanga, in all the provinces across the country. Yet, critical gaps still remain. Funding gaps mean some districts go without vital community outreach, and then in some cases you would find that promising projects are actually stopped or they stall, be it is the 1.1 million campaign or be it is the Zikhala Kanjani campaign. Lives that could be saved are put at risk. The Resource Mobilization Committee exists to change that. Today's session is about equipping you to close that particular gap that exists when we talk about resource mobilization processes. So the purpose of this talk is largely around clarifying the resource mobilization mandate and governance structures, procedures that need to be followed in the context of the civil society or in the context of the civil society forum. It serves as training material and also induction material for new members into this resource mobilization or this resource mobilization committee. But also these talks are also going to offer practical tools and templates when it comes to aspects to do with things like donor mapping, engagement, be it is within the civil society or between civil society and government or civil society and private sector. But also these talks are also going to give us an idea in terms of how we can go around putting together proposals and how we can position ourselves in this particular space. Part of the core objective of me giving these talks around resource mobilization with a special focus on the Resource Mobilization Committee is also to touch a little bit around how we can standardize the processes for accountability and transparency at a provincial or a district level. So key around this is some of the things that we will be talking to is the fact that particularly in the Mpumalanga context, Mpumalanga is being one of the provinces where we have got civil society forum leaders. Typical example is that in eThekwini it's largely rural, where there are access challenges, there are cross-border and health-related issues because of people coming in to the eThekwini district. And then in Kangala, it's a predominantly mining, where there are mining community health priorities, but also there is migration in and out of Nkangala district. On the other hand, we've got Spande, which is predominantly it's an agricultural sector where there is a need for collaboration and partnership with the farmers, and also it has got lots of mobile population. But key also is that within Mpumalanga there is a strong private sector presence. Yet from where I'm sitting, I feel like it's underutilized or it's under leveraged. You might find that they might be having those resources, but we are not tapping into those resources strategically, so we are not reaching out to the private sector. And there's a need for us to come together as a civil society and say, how can we reach out to the private sector? So opportunity for coordination has presented itself. There is a need for us to have a united front in terms of going to the private sector, not to be looking at it from a point of at an organizational level and then approaching the private sector, approaching the mines, approaching the farmers in the different communities, approaching businesses in these different communities. So there is a need for us to have that united front as we go to these particular communities. So in terms of some of the discussions that we'll be talking to, we would largely talk about who could potentially use this material. So this material, like I said, is going to be a series that I will be talking to resource mobilization and with a special focus around resource mobilization committees. So potentially this could be used by provincial level resource mobilization committee members, This material could also be used by district representatives who have been infused into the Resource Mobilization Committee structures. But also, it could be utilized by CSF sector focal point persons, civil society forum. Within the civil society forum, in the different sectors, they could also have a focal person whose primary role within the particular sector is to mobilize resources. So all of this work is going to be aligned to the provincial implementation plan, which of course is aligned to the national strategic plan. But over and above that, it's going to be aligned to the consolidated, costed civil society forum sector plans that have been developed within the province. So all coordination between government, civil society, and private sector partnerships will then be strengthened potentially through this particular exercise. So there is a clear-cut link that is currently exists between the provincial implementation plan and the national strategic plan. And part of this is that the national strategic plan served as a roadmap for implementation at a provincial and also at a district level. And key is that all of these have clearly articulated 4 primary goals, which is largely around breaking down barriers, maximizing equitable access, and also building resilient systems. But over and above that, we've got the 4th goal that directly relates to this resource mobilization component, where we talk about a fully resourced and sustained NSP or PIP or multi-sectoral district implementation plan. So Resource Mobilization Committee is the funding engine of these particular plans. So without resources, goals remain aspirational. There is no way that we will be in a position to reach some of these particular goals. So when I'm talking about resources, I'm talking about resources in the holistic sense, not just financial resources. I've always said that it's not just financial resources, we talk about human resources, we talk about material as a resource. In some cases, you find that we don't have laptops. So all of those things are key and critical at the civil society forum level. In some cases, it's about knowledge. We don't have knowledge in terms of where to go, which doors to knock. In some cases, what are the primary focus areas of the mines in our catchment area? So all of those aspects, we would like to clearly articulate them in the upcoming series. So the other part is around the alignment between this and the resource mobilization terms of reference. So we are going to be talking to the membership and composition and the selection criteria. Some of these aspects have clearly been articulated in the terms of reference, so we'll touch on that in the upcoming series. So we would also define the roles of the different people that could serve within the resource mobilization committees. And we would also talk about the meeting frequency, what constitutes a quorum, the decision-making process, aspects to do with conflict of interest, aspects to do with transparency and reporting requirements, and we'll even talk a little bit around how can we potentially form some of these subcommittees and their mandate, of course. And then key is that we would also touch on aspects to do with the role of individuals within the Resource Mobilization Committee. So the members within the Resource Mobilization Committee are actually like the connectors between the civil society and the districts and government departments and private sector and donors. So they are the one that brings in the interlinkage between civil society and these key stakeholders. They assist civil society forum in terms of pitching. They do the legwork so that it assists civil society in terms of pitching to all these key stakeholders. So as a resource mobilization committee member, you would find that you are actually an advocate for the funding needs. You are the mouthpiece for the funding needs. You are the one who's supposed to be taking a leading role in terms of, these are the areas where we are having gaps. We know that there is this funding that is coming. However, this funding only covers this portion. But there are still these kinds of gaps in our communities. And as a member of the Resource Mobilization Committee, you're supposed to be pinpointing those kinds of aspects. You are the watchdog for accountability in resource use. So not only are you going to be talking about it from a point of view asking for resources, asking for laptops, asking for projectors, asking for office space as a form of a resource, requesting for knowledge, but you're also going to make sure that once that knowledge has been acquired, you come up with means through which it is effectively used within the civil society forum, within the sectors. So you are the strategist ensuring alignment between the consolidated sector plans and the provincial implementation plans and the multi-sectoral district implementation plan. So you are the centerpiece that ensures that the work that we do, there is a direct alignment and it translates to improved health service provision, because you ensure that whatever that gets to be done by the civil society forum gets to be well resourced. And you identify the key stakeholders who could potentially fund those particular components. So what are some of the key takeaways? So the resource mobilization exists to close funding gaps and coordinate donor support. So that is the primary role of having a resource mobilization committee. So it primarily exists to close funding gaps, meaning that the eye of a resource mobilization committee member is to identify potentially where are the funding gaps. There's a lot of innovation that is taking place. Zikalakanjani has been launched in other provinces, but in some of the provinces it has not yet been launched. In some of the districts it's not implemented. As a resource mobilization committee member, you need to be thinking, how could we best mobilize resources? Like I said, it's not just about financial resources. In some cases, it's about material resources, where you would find that some of the key things that are missing is actually knowledge. The Zikalakanjani guidelines or manual or framework has not yet been disseminated, or components in terms of how this will be measured or how this needs to be implemented has not yet been disseminated, and people don't know about it. In some cases, you'll find that the people that are supposed to be implementing the program or implementing the campaign, they are not capacitated, they are not upskilled in that particular space. So all of those are key and critical aspects in us identifying the gaps when it comes to resource allocation. So part of the talks that we'll be having, it will be targeted at improving effectiveness and efficiency through proper coordination and accountability. So we'll be trying to develop some of those strategies to say, how best do we mobilize resources? Like I said, this is going to be a series of talks around resource mobilization. And as I talk about resource mobilization, part of the key things is that no district should be left without an outreach worker who is assisting it in mobilizing resources. All sectors should be fully funded for their planned interventions. Donors, we're calling on the funding agencies to say, come through and support us. Let's come to a point where we have got funding agencies coming to our province, private sector coming and say that these are our entry areas of interest and we would like to support you. This is how much we would like to contribute. We would like to come to a point where the civil society forum gets to be so visible that the private sector would love to be associated with us. The different minds would love to be associated with civil society forum because of the great work that we do in terms of resource allocation and reallocation. So the work starts here. It starts with you. So don't be left behind. Let's all come together. Be a member of the civil society forum. Participate, contribute effectively.